Hi, my name is Bridget Dutta Portman. I write young adult sci-fi and fantasy. I'm also a playwright. And recently I signed with a literary agent. This is incredibly exciting. It was the culmination of a long process for me. From my very first query that I sent out to actually signing with my agent took over a year. There were times when I felt frustrated, times like I thought it would never happen, um, times when I felt like giving up, but I didn't, and it was 100% worth the wait. So, in this video, I would love to tell you about my journey and give you some tips in case they may help you on your querying journey. And I'm going to give you 7 tips. I'm also a writing instructor, and I have a thing for the number 7. I'm always coming up with 7 steps to do this, 7 tips for this. Also, 7 is green. Don't fight me on that. 7 is green. I will die on that hill. So, first of all, make sure that your query letter is as strong as it can possibly be. The very first thing that I did, once I had a manuscript that I felt really good about, really strong about, I went to a workshop called New York Write to Pitch. And this was entirely focused on developing your query letter and getting that pitch just perfect. And so we looked at things like, how do you personalize it to an agent? How do you choose good comp titles? I always struggle with comps. How do you make your summary of or your hook as enticing and as strong as it can be? If you're not able to go to a conference or a workshop, that's fine. There are lots of examples of strong, successful query letters online that you can take a look at. Maybe show your query letter to a writing group that you're part of, or a critique group. Make sure it's as strong as possible. I used a couple of websites that I found really helpful during the querying process. The first was Manuscript Wishlist. And if you're not familiar with this site, I highly recommend it. Most agents have a page on Manuscript Wishlist, and you can look up what are they looking for in terms of genres, subgenres, tropes, characters. What do they want to represent? Sometimes it'll also list their favorite novels or their favorite movies. And if something that you are pitching is similar to one of their favorites, that can be a good way to personalize your letter or to help you choose which agents to pitch to. I also used Query Tracker, and this is an online platform that allows you to track your queries, keep track of who you queried and when, what's the response. The other thing that this website allows you to do is it has a lot of data. So you can look and see an agent's average response time, for example, or their rate of requesting full manuscripts. And as somebody who likes numbers, I liked this. I think all that data kind of gave me the illusion of control. And I will say, though, that it's possible to get a little bit too into that data and sort of fall down a hole. And you don't want that. Don't be checking Query Tracker every hour. Trust me, it will not be good for you. And then I also used Publishers Marketplace. And here you can look up the latest sales, the latest deals that agents have made with publishers. So if you're interested in pitching to an agent, you can take a look at what were their most recent deals. Have they been selling books that are in your genre? And this can be also a good way for you to narrow down who you're going to pitch to. So armed with my query letter and my websites, I started querying. And I think I may have set a record for the fastest query response time. If you know of anybody who has heard back from an agent quicker than this, let me know. But my very first query, I heard back in 11 minutes. And it was a pass. It was a rejection. I ended up printing that out, and I told myself when I sign with an agent, Shh. When I sign with an agent, I will post it on my wall and frame it as a reminder that sometimes it can take a lot of rejections and a lot of failure before you get to the point where you want to get. And I haven't done that yet, only because I still need to buy a frame for it. But it's going to go up on my wall in my office. Um, so then I waited to hear from other agents, and this brings me to another tip: query in batches. Meaning, don't send out to 50 or 100 agents at once. And the reason is you want to leave yourself some room if you start to get feedback from agents, um, that maybe your query letter isn't strong enough. If you're not getting a lot of requests for partials or fulls, maybe your query letter needs work. Or maybe your opening pages need work, or your manuscript itself needs work. And if you query 100 agents, then you're not leaving yourself with room to revise and to try it again. So I queried initially in batches of 7. Ultimately, I decided 7 was probably too few. If I were to do it again, I probably would have started with like batches of 12. But whatever works for you. But query in those small batches. And then I waited. Waiting is the worst. It is the absolute worst, as you know, if you have been querying. And there's just nothing you can do but be patient.
Many unbearable hours later.
Eventually, I started getting some more responses. That 11 minutes one was definitely an exception. And I started getting some requests for partials and fulls, which was really exciting. If an agent is requesting a partial manuscript, maybe like the first few chapters, or a full manuscript, that means that your query letter is working. It's hooking the agent, it's making them want to read more. So I got some full manuscript requests, and that was extremely exciting for me. I was feeling great. I was feeling really hopeful, and then I waited some more.
75 years later.
And eventually, those full manuscript request responses started coming back in, and they were passes. I think I got like 4 or 5 passes on fulls, and that's hard when that happens, right? That hits hard. Might have been some tears involved there, but they came along with the most valuable feedback. So these were not form rejections. These were agents who had read my manuscript and had real actionable feedback for me. And that brings me to my next tip. Don't send your manuscript out too soon. In retrospect, I feel like even though I thought my manuscript was strong at the time, I think it needed more work. And it probably needed another draft or two. I got some really helpful advice from one particular agent who said that they felt the beginning of the novel was strong and the ending was strong, but the middle, things slowed down, got too dense, and I think they were right. I tend to be good with beginnings. I tend to be good with endings. It's getting those two to connect where sometimes I struggle a little bit. And so I decided to take a break from querying and listen to the feedback. So that's another tip. Be open to feedback, be willing to change, be willing to revise. And I took some time to rewrite the manuscript. I will say that, as with any time you get feedback from someone, you don't need to try to address every single thing. And you should also keep in mind what your own vision is for your novel. So, for example, I got an agent who was was interested and implied that they might take another look at the manuscript if I cut 15,000 words. And my manuscript at the time was about 86,000, so that would be a really big cut. I did consider it, And ultimately, I decided that cutting that much from the manuscript just wouldn't leave my characters room to grow and develop. It just seemed like too much. So I decided not to take that particular piece of advice. Always look for patterns. If multiple agents had been telling me, "Hey, you should consider cutting majorly," I would have probably tried to do so. Um, so, take the advice, take the feedback, be open to it. Also, keep your own vision in mind. So I rewrote, and when I started sending that manuscript out again, I felt even better about it. I think that the changes that I made based on agent feedback really strengthened that manuscript. My next piece of advice is that if you can, try to attend pitch events. These are events where either in person or virtually via something like Zoom, you can pitch to an agent and make a personal connection with them. I was able to do that. I attended an event that was a virtual pitch event. And this is where I met the person, Lee, who would become my agent. And I remember we had a Zoom meeting. I pitched my book, and we connected a little bit over our shared background in theater. Anytime you can make a personal connection like that with an agent, it can be very beneficial. And then I believe they requested my first 3 or so chapters. If you're not able to attend a pitch event, and I realize not everybody can, and this one was not free, there was a fee to register and to pitch agents. But there are other kinds of pitch events. For example, on social media, I'm on Blue Sky, and sometimes I'll see pitch events on there where you can post, in a sentence or two, a pitch of your novel, and then agents can, if they like your post, you can pitch to them. So look for opportunities like that. So then I waited a bit longer, and that partial turned into a full request. I sent in the full manuscript, and I think it was about 3 or 4 months later that I got a revise and resubmit. So a revise and resubmit is where an agent is interested, but they want some changes first. And it's no guarantee that they will offer you representation once you make those changes, but it is a good sign that they're interested. So I remember I had a Zoom meeting with Lee, and I was a little nervous, but it went well. They talked about some of the edits and changes that they had in mind, and I agreed that those changes sounded good and like something I could do. So I made those changes. I resubmitted, and it wasn't too long later. And I will always remember where I was when I got the official email offering me representation. Sometimes you'll get a phone call. In this case, we'd been going back and forth by email that day multiple times, so that the email made sense. And I will always remember, and I know this is bad, I should not have been doing this, but I was in my car. I was driving, and I should not have been checking my phone for emails while I was driving. I'm sorry, don't do that. But that's always now going to be seared into my head as that's where I was when I got the notification of an offer of representation. And I was over the moon. I couldn't celebrate too much in the car because I had to keep my eyes on the road, but I did get to do my happy dance once I got home. And it's been such a wonderful experience so far working with my agent. We are really on the same page when it comes to my work and this novel. So it's very exciting. Well worth the wait. Speaking of the wait, I believe the query that ultimately got me my agent was something like my 60th or 65th. So when people tell you you might have to pitch 50, 100, or more agents, it's very true. And so my next piece of advice is just don't give up. I know that's easier said than done, but really, everything just takes time. Agents are busy. everything takes time. Everything to do with the publishing industry takes time. So, don't give up. Keep going. You never know which which query will be the one that gets you your agent. In many ways, it's a numbers game. But there are choices you can make that will help those odds be better for you. And again, my I would say my biggest piece of advice is to be open to feedback at every stage of the process. So, for example, if you are not getting a lot of requests for full manuscripts, maybe your query letter or your opening pages need work. If you're getting full requests like I was, but then they were turning into passes, maybe your manuscript isn't quite ready yet. Maybe it's your manuscript itself that needs more work. And then my last piece of advice is find support. If you're part of a writing group, that's great. Or if you have a friend who's maybe also querying and you're in a similar situation and you can vent to each other, that's great. I have a friend who I met at that query workshop that I talked about, and we stayed in touch. We ended up signing with our agents at pretty much the same time. So we've been at the same place in our process, and we regularly text each other and keep each other updated and motivated, and that's been a really strong support for me. So find your community, find your support. So those are my 7 tips. If you are querying now, or maybe you have queried and you've signed with an agent, I'd love to know what your experience has been like. Feel free to comment. Feel free to follow me on social media. And hopefully in the future, I'll have another video like this about getting a book deal. All right, bye.